Okay, we're going to go back to our toaster that we built. Now I've upgraded mine. I've got a few more features on here, just made a couple of improvements on it. And what we're going to do is we're going to take and render this in a sort of photorealistic way. We're going to use a program called Adobe Dimension. It's not free. There is a free trial, 7-day free trial. There's also a teacher-student discount. Maybe I think it's maybe $20 a month or something like that, and it's part of a bigger Adobe Creative Cloud package. So there are ways that you can get it at least for a week for free, and then if you actually like these pieces of software, then you can subscribe to them and have them for longer if you really want to. Now this software it's not going to run in your web browser, so you do have to download it and install it. So it's not like Tinkercad. Speaking of Tinkercad, I've got my model here. I am going to export this model as an OBJ so that I can import it into the Adobe Dimension software. So you just download it. It will prepare it, and you do want to make sure you did OBJ, not STL. STL is, I guess it might work, but OBJ is simpler, and these also will not do what we want them to do. So just export it, and you'll get a little zip file. There'll be 2 files in there. One's the material information, and one is the geometry information. Then that's all we need to do in Tinkercad. So we can close out Tinkercad, and then we can go over to Adobe Dimension. I'm going to create a new scene. There are lots of options that you can set. I'm just going to take all the defaults and just take the what it gives me, and we'll work with that. So here's my little scene. It's empty right now. Over here on the side, I've got all kinds of default built-in items that I can put into my scene. In fact, there is one I want to put in here. Let's see if I can find it. Right here, a table with a tablecloth on it. So I can double click that thing, click on it. Maybe it's just a single click, and suddenly I have. I'm using the middle mouse button to scroll in and out, zoom in and out. Click the middle mouse button, and you can move up and down. You can pan all around. The right button lets you tumble around the scene. So right now I have a white table with white legs and a white scene, so there's no color, no texture, anything. But this model is built into Adobe Dimension, so you don't have to do anything special. It's just over here in this list of other models called models. Now I do want it to have some material properties, so I've got Adobe Standard Materials and then Substance Materials. In fact, here's a wood. So I'm going to take this wood and drop it onto the legs. And in a second, you'll see there's some wood material looking on the legs. I want to have a tablecloth here. I found one, this striped, let's see, what is it called? If I hover, striped fabric, drop it onto the tablecloth. Now I might have actually put it on the legs too. Let's see. Nope, it didn't. All right. You can kind of see what's selected with the outer, the blue halo around everything. So now already I've got a little tablecloth in my scene. My scene doesn't have a whole lot else. Let's put some, let's put an image in the background. I have several to choose from. This one looks nice and generic. Just going to drag it into there. Now it does have this table as part of it. I'm not worried about that because I'm going to zoom in to where you can't even see the bottom like that. So we're not going to have to worry about seeing that. We just kind of want something in the background back here. Now we need some stuff on our table. Let's get it in a nice position. I don't know, something like that maybe. We can always change it. We might have to drop it down lower. Something like that. We can always move it around. Let's put, right now this is our scene, what's in there. Right now there's a light already in there. We can leave that one, although to me it's a little bright. So I'm going to click on this environment light and drop the intensity down to, I don't know, 65, 4%, something like that. We'll render it in a second and see if that's reasonable. But we need our toolbox. So to get our toolbox, we go to File. Remember, we saved it out. It's going to be a zip file when you save it from Tinkercad, so you have to extract that, and then you have the two files that are inside there. So File. And now you can't see on your screen the windows that are popping up here for File, but it's just as you would expect. File, click on File, and then you'll have an option to import a 3D model. And you know, on your screen you can't see that, but I can on mine. So File, Import 3D Model. And then I saved it on the desktop, so let's go to the desktop. Again, you can't see what I'm doing. And it's loading it, and somewhere in here I have, oh, there it is. It's huge. So, oh, let's talk about this little gizmo right here. So this gizmo is how you manipulate objects in your scene, 3D objects. So the middle part here, you can drag it around to place objects, and sometimes it'll do what you want, sometimes it won't. But the cones are to move in those directions, so just in that direction. The circles are to rotate, so I need to rotate it to where it's sitting in the right direction. If you hold down Shift while you're moving these things, it'll snap to certain common positions. But it's way too big compared to my table. So the squares are scale. Now, they say scale X, Y, scale Z. I want it to scale in all three at the same time, so just hold down Shift and drag on one of those and get it to a reasonable size. And then I'm zooming in again with the middle mouse button scroll wheel. I'm gonna get it kind of over our table. It's actually in our table right now. It might still be a little bit big. Let's make it a little smaller. And now it's floating above our table, if you see. So I'm going to drag the blue arrow down to make it in contact with the table. And let's put it kind of in the back. Right now, it's like perfectly aligned with the table. That's not what I really want, so I'm going to tilt it just a little bit, just so it's not perfect, you know, make it a little bit uneven. Okay, now this environmental light, it's kind of like just a light everywhere, and it doesn't really cast shadows the way you may want them. So over here you have directional lights, and you have just 4 set up to just drop in there. I think I will drop the sun in, and it brightened everything up, and you can kind of see a shadow back here. I actually want that shadow over on this side, so in the rotation I'm just going to drag until the shadow shows up somewhere over there. Now it looks kind of weird right now, but when we render it, I think it'll look right. Okay, so we have our toaster in there. We have a shadow, we have a light. It might be a little bright. We might have to drop its intensity a little. We'll see. What's it going to look like? This is not rendered. This is kind of no different than what Tinkercad was doing. Let's go to this render tab, and let's render. Now it's just saying that I haven't changed the file name, so everything that I render has been called untitled, and so I don't want to replace that. Yes. Oh, there was a preview. So here it's rendering. There's kind of our, you know, and it's taking multiple steps here. This is called ray tracing. And so there, remember that light we put in and that environmental sunlight type thing, everything. There are rays of light, digital light, emanating from those sources and hitting different surfaces here and interacting. Sometimes they'll bounce and cause a reflection. Sometimes they'll get blocked and cause a shadow. So there's all kinds of math going on. I am on the lowest quality right here. You have a drop down that basically is just low, medium, and high. And down here you can see kind of a progress. It's 21% done. It says it'll take 2 minutes to make this render. Right now I don't want to render the whole thing. I just want to get an idea. Does it look roughly what I want? It's kind of bright still for me. So I'm going to cancel and go back to design. So render is where you get your, you know, actual thing you're after. Design is where you position everything. I'm going to go back to that environment light and drop it down some more and make it darker, 50%, so that it's not just so, it was too bright. The other thing, remember how we added a tablecloth and wooden legs? We can do that same thing to our toolbox. The way we made it in Tinkercad, where we built a multicolored model, each one of those colors is its own group. It separates the groups together from one another. So we can go in and let's say we want a plastic for all this black features on here. There's a plastic in here. Let's just find it. Let's see, where's a good one? Well, I see a silver. Let's go ahead and put a silver on up there, and let's put a silver on these handles. You put those, you can kind of start to, you know, this is giving me a really rough idea of what the material is going to look like. I don't have a good metal here. Let's just put, I think, what is this, the gold, brass? Let's put brass on here. Now, that is definitely not the color we're after, but over here, you can click and, you know, change it to some color. Now it's way shinier than what I would like. Maybe we'll change that, but right now it's really shiny. We'll leave it for now. We still need to find our black plastic. Where is it going to be? Actually, this brass looks a little duller. Let's add it. It's not quite as shiny. Still the wrong color though. Let's go back to our color. Now we just picked that red, so you can see it down here, and we can select it again. Still kind of a candy apple color, but that's okay. We're not too worried. See if we can find a plastic. There are plastics in here, but that, oh, here's one that's just white. So let's add that here, change it to a black, but not all the way black. Let's make it a, you know, kind of just really dark gray. And let's make it a little bit rough so that it's not so reflective. All right. So now we've got all these materials on here. We could play, you know, hours with tweaking each one of these sliders if you wanted to. Let's just do a quick render. See, so this is what we had without materials. Let's see what we get with a couple of seconds rendering with materials. Way different. Let's let it make a few more passes to get a little more realistic. There's our shadow. Our drawers, the plastic drawer on the front might still be a little too reflective. It's picking up a lot of that red around it. We might just leave it that way though. We're not too worried about what we're making here. I don't know, we might drop it down or increase the roughness a little more. All right, so we get an idea. I still don't really like this red color, but it's what we got for now, and I don't want to spend ages tweaking it. So cancel. Looking better. Let's go to design. Let's do work on this material here. So I just double clicked on the drawer front. I'm going to increase that roughness a little more, 20%, so that maybe it's not quite as reflective. So let's say you want to add some other models. You could go make more things in Tinkercad and drop them in just like this thing, or you could go online and I've got a site here called Turbosquid. There are many like it. This is just one that is free. Not every model here is free, but you can search for free models. In fact, let's search for a spoon so you can see how it works. And then normally over here that says price, I just already have it set to free. So click down and set it to free. Otherwise, you can pay for any of these things, but what I'm looking for is a good spoon model. I got all these ones. I chose this one. It kind of matched what I was going for, and it was free, and it had this OBJ file format. So the Adobe Dimension software will easily import OBJ and FBX. That's an Autodesk format. So it'll import both of those really easily. I downloaded it. You just click on it, and then download, and then all the different formats, and there's the OBJ format. So you just download that. I've already done that. So let's go back to our render. And you get it in the same exact way that you got your toaster in. File, import, 3D model, and then wherever it downloaded it, still in my download folder, and it's called Spoon. So I'm going to click on it, and again, you can't see the windows that are popping up, but it's a regular import window just like any other thing. Now it's giant. You can see the edges of it. Let's zoom way out. So it's giant. There it is. There's our table. So it's way too big. So hold down Shift and one of these scale handles, get a little smaller. Let's move over here, zoom in, hold down shift, get a little smaller. Let's raise it up to where it's going to sit on our actually we could probably use it and use its center part. See how it tries to align it to whatever it's sitting on, whatever surface it's sitting on. Now that's still giant, so shift and get it reasonable. Maybe like that. Now again, I don't like it perfectly aligned, so I'm gonna, give it a different angle and move it around a little bit. I don't know. That looks decent, except it's white. I want a silver spoon, so I do have a silver material over here, silver. So again, everything's selected, so generally I'd like to unselect everything and then drop the material on there. Otherwise, sometimes you'll put material on everything. If you ever do that, then just undo, edit undo, or Control Z to undo all that extra material. So now I've got a silver spoon. I also went and I found a saucer. Again, I wanted free ones, so I didn't want to pay for it. And I liked this one, but it had a light wave file format, and it didn't have the OBJ, so I ended up with this one, I believe. It had OBJ and FBX. I downloaded the OBJ just like I did for the spoon. So going back over here, File, Import, 3D Model, Coffee Cup is what it was called. And it came in. Just got to zoom out. It's a gigantic again, so let's get it going the right way. Hold down shift to make this snap to reasonable increments. Otherwise, you have to have a very steady hand to get it to. Oh, so all right. So there is when you don't hold down shift, you get some weird scaling. So Control Z to undo that scaling. Hold down shift and scale, and it scales uniformly. Let's drop it down. It's still too big. I'm just putting these objects in to kind of, they're familiar objects to people, and so it gives you a sense of how big this toaster is. We're not measuring anything, but if we were, we could get an idea. That still may be a pretty big cup. Let's make it a little smaller. Grab the wrong thing. Maybe like that. And then I want to drop it down to where it's sitting on the table, something like that. Now it's blue. Don't really want a blue coffee cup. Let's slide it a little further back and something like that. Get our scene composed nicely. You could add bread and all kinds of things. There are plenty of free models out there. I'm choosing these models because all you have to do is add a material. Something like bread, you would have to add a texture to it, and not all models are going to be easy to work with like that. You have to have the model set up a certain way for the textures to map to it just the way you want. So these, you just add silver material, and here we're going to add a glossy white materials. Let's find a glossy white. There's glossy, and it's already white, so that looks good to me. Let's do another little quick preview on our render. So there's where we were last time. Let's render again. I'm going to not save this. I'm going to overwrite the file name. You can make a new file name every time if you want to. It's not terribly important, unless you want to not overwrite your files. So there you can start to see our coffee cup, our spoons looking nice. Toaster starting to look like a real toaster. It looks like maybe it's in a real kitchen somewhere with a tablecloth and some airy window background thing. Notice the renders are taking longer also. As you get more and more objects, particularly these reflective objects in here, it takes longer for the ray tracing to happen because you can kind of see the tablecloth is reflecting in the drawer fronts here. You can kind of see some of the toolbox reflecting in the spoon, so there's little rays bouncing around everywhere on my screen that we can't see, but the digital rays. And so the renders are going to take longer the more objects you put in here, particularly reflective objects. And we're still on the low quality render. But even so, you know, it's 2.5 minutes. That's not terribly long. And it's looking pretty nice, actually. You know, it doesn't look bad at all. I've got this weird effect right here that I don't really like. It makes it look like this drawer front is hollow, or transparent, I mean. Where that edge kind of lines up with that reflection. It's not really what I want. So if I were really worried about it, I might go in, and there's probably too much red for my taste on these drawer slides. So I might have to tweak things a little bit. But, you know, overall, for something that we spent a few minutes in Tinkercad and spent a few minutes throwing this scene together, it looks pretty nice. Let's show you one other thing, though, that you might want to do. So let's cancel this. Maybe you want to put some graphics on any of these objects. So I went and made a logo for my toaster here. And in this same file menu where we've been I can't do it when you're in render. You have to go in design. So you have to go in design. File, import. There are other options. So the options are 3D model. That's what we've been doing. Image as background. So we could do something other than our light background. Image as light. So like a reflection map. Place material on a selection, so we could put a material that we made onto a whatever we have selected, whatever object we have selected, and then place graphic on model is the bottom one. That's the one I want to do. I want to put a graphic, so a picture like a PNG, JPEG, bitmap, some kind of picture that I've made onto a model. So I'm going to do that. Now I have to find the picture wherever I saved it, so it might take me a second to find where I put that thing. Here we go. Okay, right now you can only put a decal on a individual item. Like my toaster is several items all together. See, when I click on it, I've got 4 different items. So I'm going to pick not the drawer fronts, not that, not the slides. I'm going to pick the body itself, so this group down here. So I'm going to select that and do the same thing. File, import, place graphic on model, get my picture, and it's loading it, and it put it somewhere. Oh, there it is. All right, so there's my logo for my carburetor toaster. I can scale it down a little bit. I could even imagine putting some racing stripes on here. I'm going to try and get it centered up best I can. I don't know, maybe something like that. Go back to where we were on our scene. Maybe zoom in a little bit more. Pull the spoon in a little bit, maybe. Got our logo on there. And we're going to go render. So here's where we were last time. We're going to do a new render. Overwrite the old one. And see what this one looks like. So you could play with these a long time and get them just the way you want it. And use these as some of your product shots, you know, renderings. We're still doing the lowest quality render. So once you're satisfied that everything's positioned where you want it, you've got the shadows where you want them to fall. I kind of don't like the way this shadow clips the edge of that cup. I'd rather it not do that, but it's okay. I don't really like how this is a little too red over in this area, but it's okay. I do like how my logo came out, though. It looks good. And we're just going to let it... I don't know if I'll, I'll probably shut off the video now, and then we'll post a final render of what it looks like afterwards, because we probably don't want to sit here and wait for it to finish rendering. But you can kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like. Okay, so that is Adobe Dimension mixed with Tinkercad and some free models from Turbosquid. Like I said, there's plenty of other places to get free models from. You're just looking for an OBJ model, or a FBX model would also work. So I'll post what this render looks like. Maybe I'll even run one of the really high resolution renders and see how that comes out. Thank you. We'll see you next time.